The man used a homemade nail gun to punch several expansion bolts into the wall, then hang a rope on each bolt. The other end is connected to a small tension machine. As the other presses the control switch, the huge pulling force instantly tore open a large pit in the wall. Cage quickly took his little brother through the hole and came to the door of the bank vault. Taking out the electric drill and facing the lock cylinder of the door is a driller. Then use a syringe to mix the pre-prepared detergent spirit and Shangxi aged vinegar. With a crackling sound came out. The two liquids had a violent chemical reaction. The lock cylinder of the vault door blew out at once, but at the same time, the explosion also triggered the alarm. But Cage didn't panic at all. He inserts a tiny camera into the lock cylinder. By observing the fluctuation of the gear structure inside, the horse tray unlocks the bamboo lock and the attached lock in turn, and then the two turn the handle. Inside the neat yards are dozens of tons of gold. But Cage is only interested in the cash out there, because the police are already outside preparing for the destruction. And the gold bars in there weigh 12.5 kilograms each. Even if the two of them use their breastfeeding energy, they can't move a few pieces. That's enough for them to have fun for the rest of their lives. The two quickly evacuated through the back door. But I didn't expect to encounter a bank security guard as soon as I came out, and it was a hammer on the morning sign. They had to be killed, but it was firmly opposed by Cage. It's okay to steal some money, but he was determined not to do the murder. The pickup vehicle has arrived, but the two are still arguing over the security guard. Morning Biao's gun accidentally went off during the scuffle, and he hit himself right in the calf. Cage had to drag him to the car first, when he runs back to get the money. The police have also caught up from all directions. When his accomplice saw this, he left him and drove away without hesitation. Cage took the money bag and went after him. I didn't expect to be hit by a police car. Cage continues to flee in a police car. They ended up in an abandoned parking lot, looking at the tens of millions of cash in hand. This is really a life to take money and spend it, to survive. He made a bold decision. Soon, the place was surrounded by police. Cage also raised his hands and voluntarily surrendered to the police. However, after searching the scene, it was found that the stolen tens of millions of cash had disappeared. And because no dirty models were found on site, Cage was sentenced to only 8 years in prison. The first thing I do when I get out of prison is buy a small gift. But time goes by. The daughter is long past the age of playing with plush dolls. It's just that Cage's thinking is still stuck in 8 years ago. Watching my daughter leave in a car, Cage was incredibly disappointed. He came to the bar to get drunk. I unexpectedly found out that the lady boss was the partner of the year. But the phone in the bag suddenly rang. The official funeral bid for the call. 8 years ago, Cage broke his calf. Now I can only rely on renting out too much, his proud years. The purpose is to wait for Cage to come out and get his share of the money. But in order to reduce the crime, I burned all the money long ago. May believe that in order to coerce Cage, he directly kidnapped his daughter without realizing it. In order to stabilize the morning bid, he had to say that he hid the money in another city. Cage went to the mall and buy a new mobile phone. Then he went to the train station and put the mobile phone with positioning on the train. Cage went to the FBI and told the detective about his daughter's kidnapping. But the detective didn't believe he took all the money. And according to the data, Morning Biao died on the way to a robbery as early as 2 years ago. He's trying to get away with a story like this. It's just a dream. Cage suddenly attacked. It only took 2 moves to knock 2 young agents to the ground. Then they took their access cards and went into the FBI database. According to internal data, now the only person who knows the information about the funeral bid is the old driver who abandoned him back then. Cage found the past for the first time. Cage doesn't say a word, it's a punch. It can be regarded as a breath for the betrayal 8 years ago. Then I want to know the whereabouts of the funeral dart. The driver said that he does not know the specific location of the funeral because he was trying to avoid capture. The trunk of the taxi was sprayed with soundproof cotton. At this time, the police who arrested Cage outside have come downstairs. He knocked the gun out of Cage's hand, then picked up the troll and opened the door to escape. Cage had to jump from the balcony to the roof of the neighbor's house. Wait for the inspector to come. Cage had already fled down the stairs. He ran into the street, just happened to be hit by an oncoming taxi. Cage then remembered when he was separated from his daughter. The daughter just got into a car with the same company as the taxi in front of her. Forced the taxi driver to call the head office. Finally found the license plate number of the mourning mark. According to the vehicle location information provided by the taxi company, I opened the door and found out the driver is not bereaved, just using his license plate. And the GPS tracker was also put in the trunk by him. I haven't waited for Cage to ask about the situation. The police arrived just in time, so Cage was arrested again. On the way back to the police station, Cage's phone rang. He knew it was a funeral call. So I told the 2 detectives that if I didn't answer the phone in time, my daughter would die. Unfortunately, Cage had to reluctantly break his finger. Take the handcuffs out. Cage, who got out of the car, couldn't care less about the pain all over his body. Tell Morning Biao as long as he doesn't hurt his daughter, I will go to see him again. Morning Biao revealed a satisfied smile. Cage immediately found diarrhea. Hope he can help himself steal the gold from the bank vault. Just as the two were preparing, the detective also brought people to the taxi. He learned Morning Biao's driving information. Then I realized that what Cage said was true. But currently, Cage is penniless. To rescue my daughter, he will definitely take the risk to rob the bank. How to steal tons of gold bars from bank vaults. Aim the ignited flame at the steel plate above your head. It didn't take long for a hole to burn. And on the top of the building are tons of gold bars. With a 1,000-degree flame constantly roast, the melted golden water kept flowing down from the hole. Immediately, the sewage approaching the sewer condensed into heavy gold. Awesome. Cage was a welder for half an hour. 20 million worth of gold was smelted by him. I have to say that Cage is definitely the handle of the bank robbery world. Every time Cage wants it, he always finds a way to get what he wants. But the continued high temperatures triggered the bank's fire alarm. When the detective received the news, he immediately judged that it must be Cage's fault. Wait until they open the vault door. It turns out that Cage has already escaped with the gold bars. He loaded the heavy package into a pickup truck and drove onto a river ferry. Little did he know that he had already been surrounded by police cars behind him. However, when the detectives got out of the car, they found that they had won Cage's golden cicada and escaped. And in the passenger seat was a dummy with a cigarette. The real Cage had already found Morning Biao with gold. He hoped that the other party would keep his promise and release his daughter. But Morning Biao is brooding because he lost a leg. Not only to swallow gold and burn Cage's daughter to death. Let him have a taste of what it's like to lose someone he loves. One of the two wanted to open the trunk to save people. During the scuffle, his body was ignited by flames. My daughter was about to be burned alive. Cage's sudden microcosmic explosion. One punch knocked the morning bid to the ground. Then he was consumed by the flames flowing on the ground. Cage took the opportunity to get into the cab. A foot of the accelerator drove the car into the lake. Although the flames on the car have been temporarily extinguished, the trunk is about to be filled with water. The daughter is crying for help. Cage is outside trying to open the trunk, but there is no key. How can it be broken with bare hands? Just when he was at a loss, a lame leg appears. It turns out that the funeral dart hasn't been burned to death yet. He just wants to die with Cage now. Two children who once shared weal and woe, but they turned against each other because of different ideas. This is how things are so fickle. A disabled person can never be a match for Cage. Instead, he snatched the pry pipe in his hand, pry opened the trunk at the last second, pulled her daughter back from death. However, how can a lost dart with only half a life left be clean? Finally, he was stabbed in the stomach by Cage with a stick, stuffed in the trunk where his daughter was being held. The police finally arrived. The two women were taken to the hospital. The detective learns that Cage stole the gold to save his daughter, so he put all the blame on the dead bearer. However, the story does not end there. When the police weighed the recovered gold, they found that it was missing more than 10 caskets. So I monitored Cage 24 hours a day. Cage happened to find the gold while cleaning the pickup truck that day. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. He discussed with Lacey how to deal with it. But Lacey said he would go to jail for taking the gold. Persuade him to throw it into the sea quickly. Cage thought for a long time. In the end, I decided to be a good person. Throw the gold far into the sea. The detective often loses his breath. It seems that I don't have to worry about Cage anymore in the future. However, what they don't know is what Cage threw into the water was just a fruit bowl, and the real gold is still intact on the table.